Hey, it's Georgia. Welcome to our fall garden tour here in the beautiful Willamette Valley. Here in Zone 8B, we are just starting to hit freezing temperatures and there are tons of fall colors all around. In this video today, we'll provide a quick, short tour of the garden, some fall cleaning tips, and ways to stay occupied throughout the winter months.
Hi, I'm Megan. I am the Plant Information Director at Monrovia, and I'm also an avid gardener. So I was excited to come check out Georgia's landscape after the install and see how everything's looking in fall and discuss some maintenance that can be done before the winter. So Georgia, last time I was here, it was install day. So show me around, what's going on?
Yeah, well, a lot has grown since then in the few short months. First is this heuchera. This has been looking beautiful this whole time.
Gorgeous. Which one is this?
It is Forever Purple. And like the name, it has stayed this color even through the summer heat, through everything, and hopefully throughout the whole winter.
Beautiful. And then the meadows filled in really nicely.
Yeah, it's been really beautiful. The main grass here is Carly Rose Pennisetum. It's hardy to Zone 5. I love how it has that pink flower, and it's gonna stay like this, giving us some winter interest throughout the whole winter season.
We still have some blooming perennials, so I'm sure there's still hummingbirds hanging out on those. That's awesome.
Yeah, and this is Pink Pearl Agastache, just super long blooming for months and months.
I love this fern. The color is so gorgeous.
This is Lady Pterodactyl. It's part of our Jurassic series. I agree, the color is beautiful. The texture that it brings along with the liriope and the hydrangeas, really, really lovely.
And still got some blooms on that one. Which one was that?
This is Newport. It's part of our Seaside Serenade collection. And I agree that dark purple and then how it antiques is really lovely. And then we just sort of echo, as you remember, echoing the grasses from this to give us a little bit of balance in the garden, and then mixing in some more shade-loving plants underneath this magnolia, which is giving us this gorgeous yellow and orange fall color.
Yeah, there's such a great combination of colors happening right now with the perennials and the fall color. It's looking really beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. So now it's just time to think about how we transition from August and the summer heat into the fall and then into the winter as well.
So in the fall in my garden, I actually don't do that much. I think a lot of people think that you need to do everything in fall, but I really just take care of some perennials. There's a few that I like to cut back. I like to take off the blooms of my lavender and tidy those up a little bit. But it's a really great climate to do your pruning of trees and shrubs in about February here, just anytime before things break dormancy. So I don't do much pruning, but I definitely want to make sure that the ground is covered. I don't want any bare dirt anywhere. So either mulching or leaving leaves around, just things like that. That's one of my biggest things to make sure before the winter that I take care of.
So fall is a great time to prune, but it certainly isn't the best time to prune everything. This is a great example of things not to prune in the fall. This is a deciduous magnolia and it's going to bloom really early in the spring. And I can tell that here it set its buds. And so I really don't want to prune right now because I'm going to prune off all of these flower buds and I won't get to enjoy that spring show. So while I'm thinking about in pruning mode in the fall, instead of pruning a lot, on something like this, I'm gonna prune any dead or diseased branches or any branches that are crossing each other or just overall messing with the structure of the tree. So here, I can see that there's a couple of dead limbs on this tree that I can cut away in the fall, but I'm still gonna keep all of my nice buds for the spring.
Okay, Georgia, it is November. We have our reblooming Newport Seaside Serenade hydrangea. Do I prune this?
I wouldn't. So in the fall, I would not prune your hydrangea macrophyllus. That is because they set, whether they're reblooming or not reblooming, they are still setting buds on their old wood. And so by pruning, you're going to prune off all of your earliest flowers for the next season. So I wouldn't do it. Also, the lovely thing about Seaside Serenade, especially Newport, is that it's gonna stay nice and compact on its own. And so really, you don't actually need to prune this at all. It stays nice and small, the stem stays sturdy, so you really don't need to touch it. It does bloom on both old and new wood, so if you do accidentally prune off some buds, you'll still get a couple blooms throughout the rest of the next season.
So what if I don't want this though? Can I get rid of that?
Yeah, you definitely can. So it's really easy to see on the plant where the buds are. They're quite fat. And so a nice thing to do would just be to just prune the flowers off from there, and then you're not gonna harm any buds if you just prune off just the flower.
Awesome. Well, I love hearing that I don't have to do work.
Yes, it's always the best.
So one thing that's popular right now is some people call it leave the leaves. I know a lot of people feel like they need to rake up all the leaves and get rid of them in fall. I mean, you want to get leaves off your lawn, but they're a really great natural mulch. It can be sort of like a beneficial way to be a little lazy, I would say. But it's just so much easier than coming in and bringing in all your mulch from someplace else. But there are situations where you maybe wouldn't want to, you don't want it to be really thick, because that can actually kind of smother plants or make it hard for your perennials to come up next year. If it gets really matted down and you have inches, that's gonna be too much. And then you also want to think about disease. If you have any plants that maybe you're worried about any sort of foliar disease on them, you want to get rid of those leaves and get them off your property, put them in your yard to breathe in.
Yeah, I like to think about leaving the leaves in terms of just that light layer, like you mentioned, about protecting your soil, and knowing that leaves can be a really good way to incorporate organic matter into your soil for the spring. So instead of, maybe you can add compost and your leaves to create more nutrition. But that being said, it also plays a role into where you live. So if you live in a place like the Willamette Valley here, where we do have a lot of microbial activity in the soil throughout the winter, that's really great for us to maybe leave more leaves. But if you live in a colder area that maybe has less activity through the winter, maybe you leave less.
Most plants go dormant in winter, depending on your climate, but it doesn't look the same on every plant, so it's really kind of knowing what you're working with, what's normal, and for me, that's just each year always looking up, observing my garden. But a lot of perennials die down to the ground, some are evergreen. You should know if something's deciduous or not. If you're seeing leaves drop on an evergreen, maybe that's a cause for concern. But sometimes on some, older leaves dropping is kind of normal. So it's really just paying attention, learning about plant care, and knowing what's normal. But not everything's a cause for concern. You just have to do a little bit of research.
Yeah, and I think using something like Monrovia.com, where you have the care guides and all the things that are put together, you can really determine, okay, is this a deciduous plant? Should it be dying back to the ground, or should it be losing its leaves? And if so, then that also plays into your fall care, right? If you have an agastache like I do in my garden that's still blooming, but I know that it's gonna die back to the ground probably in the next few weeks, so I'm gonna cut that back when it's done blooming, and that's totally okay. And knowing your baseline for what is normal, by looking at your garden throughout every single season throughout the years, you get an idea of what things should look like, and that's how you can really identify whether you have pest or disease issues, is if you know what your baseline is.
I feel like I learn the most about plants just by observing.
Yeah, and not being afraid to take a risk, whether that be a big risk if you're comfortable, or a small one in the garden, planting something that you're maybe not used to. That's also a really good way to learn about how your garden works and the soil that you have and your exposure, all sorts of things.
So I'm just checking for any sort of pests on this rhododendron, which a lot of times they're under the leaves. So I saw a few white flies on this, and then there's some azalea lacebug, but nothing I'm really concerned about. It's okay to see some insects. You just want to make sure it doesn't get out of control, or that it's not damaging any of your leaves.
Fall is a really good time to sort of assess your garden and see what worked throughout the season and what didn't work. So, whether you had a really hot summer and, like me, maybe lost a tree and your shade has shifted a bit, now is the time to really think about, what that looks like for next year. So whether that means planting shrubs and trees in a spot that maybe didn't work, or you lost something throughout the season, fall is a great time to plant your shrubs and trees, and then noting what you might want to add for the spring with your color and your perennials too.
So we're pretty lucky being in Zone 8 here, that we can grow a little more as far as hardiness. We don't have to do quite as much winter protection, but in colder areas, there are definitely things that people have to think about protecting if you're pushing your zones a little bit. I think the best way to find out about that is go to your local garden center. I think a hint you're going to see is if there's a lot of different winter protection options available in your garden center, that's going to kind of give you the idea that, okay, there's some things I probably need to be protecting in my area. Winter gardening, I think maybe my favorite is camellias, which is, such an awesome evergreen with those glossy leaves, but you also have varieties that start blooming in fall, bloom into the winter, some that bloom like really early spring, with that first thing really popping in your garden.
I really love conifers in the garden in the winter. They provide a lot of structure, whether that be upright with something like ember waves, or we have a new thuya called Prairie Pillar, which is this beautiful golden yellow that turns this sort of orangey color in the winter. And then we also have a brand new conifer called Golden Child, which I love, love, love. And that's more of a compact, 2 to 3 feet tall, little round ball. So that's a really nice conifer in the winter as well.
Sure. And I think conifers are, in colder climates, probably one of the best ways to have your evergreen color.
Another flowering plant that I really love for the winter are hellebore. And a lot of hellebores are really only for the flowers, but we have a great series, it's called Ice and Roses, and it has this really robust foliage. It's super thick, really beautiful, so even before it flowers, it looks gorgeous. And then the flowers themselves are held upright, and so in the winter, like above the snow, you see these really awesome, large, bright colored flowers, which I love them.
Some people like to call winter the dream season, in that you're dreaming about what your garden's gonna look like in spring and what you're gonna wanna plant. I think it's a really great time too to look at what your garden looks like in winter and think, what can I plant next year that's gonna make this really great next winter? What's gonna give me some extra color, or what spots am I missing some evergreens? So it's a good time to assess your year-round landscape and what you're looking for.
And one of the ways that I really love to use the winter season to think about gardening all year is throughout the year, I like to take photos of my garden, like every month, because you forget. And so I like to take photos and then find where there are gaps. What seasons look really good and what seasons or months are there maybe a lull. And then from that information, you can go on Monrovia.com and find something. I want a summer blooming. I need something short or something big, or just sort of use your photos as a tool with Monrovia.com to sort of plan out and dream up your garden that you're going to create in the spring. During a fall tour of the nursery, I was completely blown away by the amount of flowers these penstemons still have. This is our Harlequin series. All the colors in the series have these beautiful blooms. We are into November. This is magenta and pink, and then yours is purple.
Yeah, these are great. I actually have these in my garden. I have the purple, and I planted them in spring and was just blown away by how full they were by the summer, and yeah, they just keep blooming. They're really, this is a winner. This is an impressive plant, I think.
What I love about it is the size, so it's gonna stay, 1.5 feet to maybe 2.5 feet tall, depending on your conditions and your climate, and just continually bloom. Hummingbirds love, love, love these Harlequins, and because of their small stature, they really can stay, they really can be placed into any garden of any size.
I would put these in a container too. I think this would be awesome in like a pollinator container. But yeah, I had hummingbirds and butterflies all over this.
Exactly, and most penstemon get quite large and quite tall, and oftentimes when they bloom, their blooms are really tall as well, and they tend to flop over in the garden, but this stays really robust, like you mentioned, that nice little ball of blooms in the garden without flopping. Thank you so much for tagging along, and we really hope you embrace this wonderful time of the year. If you found these tips helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below with your fall gardening experience. And you can find more information on monrovia.com.